So for your homework, you're going to write me a well-formed paragraph. But I want to give you now what exactly the rest of a well-formed paragraph would look like. That was just the first sentence of a paragraph. There are 5 key parts to a nicely written, well-formed paragraph. These 5 key parts include a main point statement, expert testimony, example or metaphor, a brief story, and a concluding statement. When writing an informative paragraph, it's important to include all 5 of the parts and to keep them in this specific order. So what do I mean by that? First, we write a declarative main point statement that has a specific subject and a point of view. We never start our paragraphs with questions. So sometimes students like to start it with a question. We don't ask questions to the reader. We make a point. We tell them what we think, and then we prove it. Next, we offer expert testimony that comes from a credible source. For right now, your textbook is going to be the biggest expert that we're going to use in this class. And it's not just getting testimony from anybody, it has to be somebody who's an expert in that field, somebody who has expertise or experience in that particular subject. Then we give an example, or you can use a metaphor. I'll talk about metaphor a little bit later. Then you can also want to tell a brief story, and you're going to write a concluding statement that also gives your opinion and refers back to the main point. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So if I click here, I can see now what that'll look like. So I'm going to give you an example. So based on those communication principles, one of those principles that we discussed was that communication is irreversible. So if I wanted to teach the class, or if I wanted to write a paragraph about the fact that communication is irreversible, this is what a well-formed paragraph would look like. Communication with another person is irreversible. Interpersonal communication authors Adler et al. 2016 states, words said, messages sent, and deeds done are irretrievable. That's on page 14. For example, when a guy accidentally tells his girlfriend for the first time that he loves her, he can't simply take those words back. One time I was having an argument with my mother about my curfew. She told me to be in the house by midnight, but I didn't arrive until after 1 a.m. The next morning, she told me I was grounded for the next 2 weeks and couldn't go to my friend's birthday party. I told her I hate you. Still to this day, as a 40-something-year-old man, my mom would still tell me about the time I told her those words, and she'll have a mist in her eyes. Once words come out of our mouths and actions are taken, we can never fully reverse the effects. So my paragraph is about the fact that communication with another person is irreversible. I use the rest of these paragraphs to prove that. First, I started with my expert testimony. Adler et al. Are the authors of your textbook. That looks strange, yes. The reason why is because when you have a book that has more than 2 authors, you do not write all of their names. You use this expression et al., which is a Latin expression to represent and others. So Adler et al., and then you put into parentheses the copyright year, which the book that I used was written in 2016, states, comma, quotation mark. I wrote the exact words that were in the book. Then you close the quotations, you put parentheses, you put small p, period, put the page number, not PG, not capital P, but small p. And then you finally put the last period at the end of that. That's how that should look. Why is the professor harking on that? Because most people in college, I'm talking about everybody, not just Bronx Community College students, most people in college don't know how to do that right. So if you are one of the few who do know how to do that right, you stand out. That's cultural capital. It says something about you. It makes somebody who has never met you think you're smart, because most people don't know how to do that right. I want you to do it right. So please, when you do your homework assignment, make sure you look at my example so that you can emulate that, copy that. Next here, I'm going to give my example, right? So I gave my example about the guy telling his girlfriend that he loves her. He can't take those words back. That example, the sole purpose is to prove my point that communication is irreversible. Then I tell a brief story about the time I was mean and told my mom I hate her. And every time she tells me that story, she got a little tear in her eyes. That story was designed to prove that it's irreversible. No matter how many times I say I'm sorry, I cannot take that back. She's still going to feel the pain of that, right? So all of these things were designed to prove my point that communication with another person is irreversible. I close it off with my concluding statement. Once words come out of our mouths and actions taken, we can never fully reverse the effects. That's what a well-formed paragraph should look like. So you will submit your own well-formed paragraph where you will teach your classmates about one of the 5 communication principles. Those principles, again, is that communication is transactional, it's intentional and unintentional, it's irreversible, it's unrepeatable, and that there's a content and a relational dimension. Because I use the principle that communication is irreversible, I use that one already in my example that I'm showing you again right here. You cannot use that one. You must use one of the other 4: transactional, intentional and unintentional, repeatable, or content dimension and relational dimension. Some students will often ask me, Professor, do I have to do both content and relational dimension, or can I just choose one of them? Yes, you can. You can write your paragraph just on relational dimension, or write your paragraph just on being on unintentional. You don't have to try to make your paragraph fit for both intentional and unintentional, or content and relational dimension. But you will write a well-formed paragraph, just like I wrote one here, for one of these other principles. Just make sure you don't do irreversible, because I've already done that one for you, and you're not going to copy directly from my paper. All right? That's your homework. You might struggle through this. That's good. You're supposed to struggle through it. Struggle through it so that we can work through it together so that you can get it right. Because when you have to do your midterm is a full expository essay. By the time we get to that midterm, I want you to be an amazing writer.